Okay. Right. And the first thing I'm going to do is put myself out of the way so I can't see myself talking because I find that really off-putting. Okay. So yes, my name's Drew, and I'm a sound designer working in theatre. And it's my job is to work with the director and with the script. We go through the play and we choose what sounds we're going to use for the show, what soundscape we're kind of going to create. And this can be live sounds, so we can work with kind of things like working with actors. We might work with actors' voices. We might put microphones on them so we can change their voices or make them louder. Or if we're working with bands or instruments, we might put microphones on different instruments so that we can make that louder and balance that sound and treat it so it sounds really nice. And we also work with, and this is more of what we're going to be talking about today, recorded sounds, so sound effects. So sound effects can fall into different kind of categories. There can be kind of realistic sound effects. So we're talking more if there's a location. So we might be in a field. We might want to hear bird song. Or we might be on a street. So we might want to hear cars and people passing us by. And then things like this we also have to take into account can be affected by things like time of day. So birdsong in the morning will be different to the afternoon, and then in the evening there might not be any birdsong. There might be owls or something. And it can also be affected by, we have to think about things like the weather could affect it. So if we're on a street and it's raining, then the cars are going to sound different if they're driving through puddles and things like that. There's also sounds we have to think about, like sounds that are directly mentioned in the script, which could be something like a telephone or a car horn, or they could be sounds that aren't directly mentioned in the script, and they're ones we have to kind of try and decide where we're going to put things. So if, for example, somebody in a scene leaves the scene and we know that they're going to leave the house, in the distance we might hear a door shutting, and then we might hear a car driving off. But then again, also we have to think about in what mood did that person leave the scene. So were they angry? Would they have slammed the door behind them? Or does it need to be a slam or just a normal shut? Did they drive off quickly? That kind of thing. All things we kind of need to take into account. We can also use sounds in more kind of abstract ways. So similar ways to kind of in the way that we use music maybe. So we might use sound to underscore moments in the play to create an atmosphere. So it might to maybe heighten moments of tension or things like that. Just putting something in underneath just to heighten the moment. And sounds like that can be really fun to create, but sometimes can be quite difficult to think of what to use. So I teach you a little. This is a little technique I use. I like to work with sound effects from the environment that a show is set in. So as an example, I did a show a few years back, and the set, so this is working, with the set designer as well, I decided to take a lot of influence from that. The set was kind of this modern, dilapidated building, and there was lots of electrical equipment lying around, lights and things and wires everywhere. So we decided we would use kind of electrical sounds, not in a realistic way, but as kind of background sounds to kind of underscore the kind of moments of the show. So things like, I'm going to play you something now, you should be able to, so things like electrical shorts, so little sounds like this. That again. So it's just a short little sound effect that might snap us from one scene to another, or things like buzzing sound effects, things like that, like this one. So this kind of builds. I need to put my headphones on to hear these. This is kind of a good one for moments of tension because it's kind of building up and building up. That can run under things like that. And then also we could treat sounds, so to make them sound completely different. So if we took this electrical sound here, it's like an electrical arcing, buzzing sound. We can do things like slow it down. It becomes a really kind of spooky kind of atmospheric sound, which would work quite nicely in the background. And the idea with sounds like this, stop that. The idea with sounds like this is that people might not realize it's there, and we kind of don't want people to realize it's there, but it's going to add to that feeling. So if it wasn't there, you'd probably notice, but the idea is for it to be in the background, and it's going to be subtle and just add something to it. So yeah, so as what we do as sound designers, a lot of what we do won't be heard by the audience, but that's what we try to do. We try to create that scene, not make it obvious. There will be sounds that are obvious that are meant to be there, but if there'll be other things running underneath that just create that feeling. So now that we've found all our sounds, we need to build our show. And we work in layers when we build sound as well. So the best way I can think to give you an example is it's like musicians work in layers. So they might record all their different instruments separately, and then they'll piece them together. And it allows us to be really flexible to go, okay, I want this bit a bit louder and this bit a bit quieter, so that we can create our scene. So I'll give you a little example now. So we'll start off. You should be able to hear some C. Can you hear that? Is that coming through? Kind of a oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
It's coming through. Good. So we put some C in, and we might say, well, we're at the sea. Okay, let's put some seagulls in. We have some seagulls, and then we think, well, we're on the sea. Maybe we're on a boat. So let's put ourselves on an old boat. So this is an old kind of tall ship. So there's a sound in there of boat hull in the water. We've put some creaking of ropes in. And then maybe we want to make the weather a bit worse with things, maybe there's a storm coming. So there's some distant thunder we'll add in on top. Start some rain, comes in over the top of that. And we're just layering up here, creating more of a scene. We can add some more thunder. There's some wind in there as well. Now the rain is getting heavier. And then we're going to make the wind even louder, and we make the sea swell more. We're in more and bigger, it feels like we're more in a kind of storm. And we'll end with the big thunder. So that's all of those are individual sound effects, but we can put them together to create something, to create more of a scene. And it allows us to be we can pick and choose when we put stuff, where we put sound effects in. We're not just creating one long track, we're customizing it to the show, because the show's always going to be different every night. Things are going to time slightly differently. It allows us to be really flexible. Okay, so now let's have a look. Let's do some examples now. Let's have a look at our image from our book. So we've been working from The Red Tree by Sean Tan, and we've been looking, let me do the screen share thing rather than do this. Let's share that. So can everybody see this? See, is this shared all right? Brilliant. So yes, so this is our image that we're working with this week. Wonderful things are passing you by. And so we've got this window, and we've got the little girl behind the window, and then we can see the reflection of what she's looking at. And we've got this big object in the sky here passing through, and then butterflies over here that go smaller and smaller and almost look kind of confetti-like over here. And so if we think about what sounds we might take from this. So for me, so we've got an outside scene here with the blue sky here, so there could be birds outside. And then we've got this big object traveling through the sky, which for me, it reminds me of those kind of big parades with confetti or kind of ticker tape, one of those big blow up balloon blimp things they have in those big American parades. So it almost feels like there'd be the sound of celebration, of people cheering, and maybe music off in the distance somewhere. Maybe that accompanies that. But then also maybe we think about what sounds go with our little girl here. Maybe, because she's inside, is it kind of is it boring inside? Do we feel sad about this? Do we feel that she's bored? Is there the sound of something like just a monotonous ticking clock in the background to highlight that? So there's stuff we can draw from that. I'm not gonna give you any. I'm not going to give examples to think about that, but we're going to have a little task using this to influence us later. This image. So we'll come back to that later. Let me stop sharing that. But I'm going to give you a task first, and this is one you can do wherever you are if you've ever got time on your hands. And I do this today because it's a really good way of training your hearing and to kind of pay attention to more of what's around you. And what you do is basically you sit down, you be really quiet, and then you take 5 minutes. It might not take 5 minutes, however long it takes, but you sit and listen, and you try and listen to the first 5 things you can hear. And it might be really quiet. You might not think you can hear things to begin with, but then slowly, the more you listen, the more you'll hear things. So here, if it's me sat here, I can hear, if I stop and listen, I can hear the bird song outside because I've got the window open. And I can hear a chainsaw, I think, somewhere in the distance. And if I move my hearing inside, I can hear the fans on my computer. And it's a really interesting experiment to kind of get you listening more, to get you, because a lot of the time we don't listen to things that are going on around us. And that's something we do as sound designers, is we need to listen more so that it can help us in doing our jobs. And if you're doing this with someone else, what you can do is you could, instead of playing I Spy with my little eye, you can play I Hear with my little ear. And you might find that you hear completely different things to someone else. It's quite an interesting experiment just to see what you each hear. I played it with my wife earlier while we were sat in a hammock in the garden. We both heard very different things. So now let's have a look at a little task we can take away with us to do. So going back to our image, wonderful things are passing you by. I don't think the image could be more appropriate at the moment, given that we're all currently stuck indoors. If you've got time, it would be wonderful if you can do it. It would be lovely for you to go out and do a bit of sound collecting for us. And if we take our image, let me share again. If we take our image as inspiration for this. So let's think I want you to think of 2 sounds. And I want them to kind of relate to the feeling let's take our feeling, what we get from our image. And for you, it might be different for me, than it is for me. So I get 2 feelings: the feeling inside and outside. The outside feeling is this kind of cheerful, happy atmosphere, and then the inside feeling is kind of either boredom or sadness or something that goes along with that. So as examples, I've got you some here. I've got this, which I recorded the other day, which you should be able to hear. That's the dawn chorus recorded. So if you get up really early in the morning, the birds are incredibly noisy at dawn. So that's recorded outside of our bedroom window. And yeah, from our house. And then, to contrast that, inside, I've got this sound. I realise that could sound a bit rude. It's not. It's a door creaking. But it's those 2 contrasting sounds. So those for me are the 2 that I found just to go against our 2 feelings, inside and outside. And if you're able to, it'd be wonderful if you could go and collect these for us, everyone, and send us some examples. Everyone, if you can get hold of a phone or a parent's phone, you've on all phones pretty much you should have, or you can download one for free. But if you've got an iPhone, there is an app called Voice Memo, which you can record things onto. And both of those sounds were recorded on my phone. I didn't use anything more special than that to record them. You can record those sounds and feel free to send us into them. It might be really interesting to see what you've got and what you want to send to us. Yeah, so that's a little task to go away and do. And that's a little bit about me, what I do. And I think I'm going to hand back to Amanda now, if that's all right.
Yes, thank you, Drew. So I'm just going to do that final bit of saying thank you very much to Drew for that amazing session. And we've got another session with Drew coming up later in May. So we'll look forward to what he gets us to create next time.
I've got to think of more now.
So if you do have any soundscapes that you've gone out and recorded on your phones or your parents' phones, do send them to us. You can send them to us at calmeandcreative@redearththeatre.com. And I'll say that again. The email address is calmeandcreative@redearththeatre.com. So thank you very much. Next week we've got some more sessions coming up, and they're all on our website at the Calm and Creative show page. I nearly couldn't remember where it was, at the Calm and Creative show page. And so all I need to say now before we sign off is go well and take care, and look forward to seeing you next week.